Okay, well, welcome everyone to Tashkeel Talks, part of our season of talks and lectures throughout the year. My name is Rock Galpin. I'm a design consultant at Tashkeel and moderator for tonight's talk. Today we have a very special guest, Tamilla Jazayeri. Tamilla is an interior and furniture designer from Iran. She studied architecture at Central St. Martin's. She's worked at Bloomingdale's and Habitat before setting up her interior and furniture supply brand TAM here in Dubai in 2016. Welcome, Tamilla. Very much looking forward to your talk. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Rock. I just want to say thank you, thanks to Rock to start with, and also definitely Tashkeel for the platform to accommodate this. I haven't done a talk since COVID, and this is sort of one of my first online talks that I've done. And it's actually really nice to have this opportunity to be able to talk about sort of our experiences and within that sort of design platform or design community. So it's really kind of good to be here. So thank you very much, guys. I'm going to get started. So I'm going to start with a little introduction about myself. And obviously, this is an hour-long sort of talk, so make sure that, I hope you find it useful, you find something interesting, whether it's design-related, whether it's business-related, personal growth. And if you didn't, please make sure that you do ask a question at the end and get something out of your hour for sure. So we're going to start with a little bit of sort of background and then move on to talking about that kind of starting in the creative world, followed by inspiration and the design process, the production and manufacturing in the UAE, which is potentially, I would say, the most important part, perhaps the toughest part as well, some business talk and exhibition insight, and hopefully if we have a chance, we'll talk about the design community and how we should all stick together and make sure that we really strive, especially in the current situation. So I am the proud founder of TAM Studio. We currently have a small team, a very unique team of an interior architect, Mahsa, our sort of designer artist. She does her art on the side as well, and myself. Now, before I sort of get into TAM, I'm going to talk about a little bit about myself. Since my computer is brand new, I couldn't really put any kind of background. I didn't have any photos really. So I really made this presentation pretty much today. I've had some serious technical issue. I am Iranian. I moved to the UK about 20 years ago. Neither of my parents are really creatives. However, my mom she was basically a housewife in Iran. And when we moved to the UK, she trained herself and became this sort of beauty expert and started her own business. So this was really kind of a nice sort of inspirational element for me in my life. My dad wasn't necessarily, he didn't have a creative job, but he plays the keyboard, he sings, and he always wears these sort of bright t-shirts. And whenever I had a problem back at university, it was the one being able to support. It was very technical. So I think the family was kind of definitely my support there. And another element that was kind of very important to where I am today is definitely the work experiences I've had. And I've had several kind of dynamic work experiences in the past. So I'm going to kind of start with that a little bit. My first experience after university was actually in Indonesia. And here it was a fantastic opportunity because normally if you've studied in the UK, it's really hard to get hands-on. It's hard to get a job, to get started, let alone running a project or meeting clients, for instance. So I really had the opportunity over here to go to Jakarta, go to Indonesia to start with, and be able to do very kind of nice creative site installations, be able to do a lot of model making for an architecture firm. This was my kind of first experience with architecture. I studied spatial design and architecture, very much focused on sort of community work and spaces. So here it was kind of more hands-on in terms of creating even sort of small products, as you can see on the imagery here as well. They were fun. They were very kind of diverse. This particular architect, Budi Pradono, he had a very small studio, and in terms of his sort of portfolio, he managed a lot of variety of projects in Indonesia. And part of his work was also using natural resources such as bamboo, which was obviously very common over there. And at the same time, as I was doing all of this, I was definitely enjoying the kind of the life over there as well. It was less than a year living in the suburban part of Jakarta. So it was a very sort of fun experience altogether. But very quickly, I had to move out. My parents told me that it's enough, this gap year is over, and you should come back and you should find yourself a job. And I knew at this point that architecture wasn't necessarily for me. Architecture for me was a lot more, it required a longer sort of duration in terms of projects coming along, and I just wasn't patient enough for that. And I wanted something that is a bit more kind of fast-paced, more rapid in terms of change, in terms of creativity. So then I somehow landed myself a position in Habitat. Now, the audience might not know Habitat very well. This is a very kind of iconic brand in the UK by Terence Convan. So he was the first kind of designer that introduced certain elements to the British sort of community, such as your mock-up hut and duvet. We're talking about 1950s here. And working for Habitat wasn't just, it was basically like a sort of a furniture brand, but it wasn't just that, because it had this sort of iconic sort of influence attached to it. It made the whole process a lot more exciting. So I really learned about a furniture brand from sort of A to Z to start with, and also how to present this to the client, how to visualize and do windows, to draw on certain aspects of the furniture to make the client and educate the client to understand the collections better, to understand trends, colors, different styles. Habitat was so kind of so different as a brand because of its sort of root and history, that even Design Museum in the UK actually included it as part of one of their shows, focusing on all the kind of wonderful furniture pieces that Terence Convan had done. So this was quite a nice sort of learning experience for me as well. And you can see in some of the photos, I mean, it was kind of mixing that modern mid-century element with the element of modernism and minimalism. So after Habitat, I sort of flew over to the UAE, and I worked for Bloomingdale's Home. This is probably a brand that everyone's familiar with. There is a home store that is placed in Dubai Mall, and in Bloomingdale's Home was very exciting, was different. They basically work with various brands, international brands, furniture, accessories, anything to do with home, obviously. And I choose this picture because that was one of the kind of fun collaborations that we had with, I think it was called, it wasn't Downtown Design Days at a time. So this was a few years back when I think Downtown Design was called Design Days, or maybe Design Days was a little bit separate. I'm not 100% sure. But I don't think we had Downtown Design back then. We only had Design Days. So there was a collaboration, and we selected around, I think, 10 designers to have one stool from each designer on display. And we had to accommodate our sort of part of the showroom and window to that. And each piece was 1,000 dirham, so hence the 10, 100, and 1,000. here I really kind of enjoyed working with multiple brands, a lot of collaboration, again, understanding how a corporate model works, which was a lot bigger than what I've done before. And I was also very lucky to work with a lot of suppliers in the UAE, really get to know the market, the client audience, that kind of client profile, sorry, and be able to slowly design a few pieces for even Bloomingdale's home, for their sort of personal shopping area. So this is one of the one of the first works that furniture pieces that I created. And it was at a time rose gold was very fashionable. So mixing these different kind of material, wood, rose gold, marble together. And we did a few more pieces around the showroom. And this kind of responsibility grew to be kind of bigger and developed to even do certain sort of shop fit out in the home store and also the fashion store at Bloomingdale's. So having said all of this, all these experiences really kind of made me the sort of robust hard worker, and it's what pretty much led me to start TAM in a sense. I really learned about sort of work ethic, working long hours and not complaining about it, and just really enjoying it and getting into it, because I felt like it was my passion at a time as well, and I was really enjoying it. And I think, as I mentioned, is pretty much understanding the customer profile in the UAE better and better. It was understanding the market better and better in the UAE, and realizing that there's almost like a niche. If you think about sort of 2014, I put this silly image here. We didn't necessarily have a lot in terms of design. It was all just kind of starting to grow better, and we didn't have a lot of like boutique designers, boutique interior designers. I don't even think we had any kind of furniture or bespoke furniture available to us in the UAE. It was mostly the contractor doing all the work, and with so little sort of resources in terms of in-house design team. And for me, it kind of became a mission that, hey, I want to try and lead the way, because it doesn't exist. There's definitely a need for it. It was a personal need as well, in terms of providing furniture that is quality, that is a little bit more minimal, moving away from that kind of the golden furniture, the carved wooden furniture, and try and see if there is something that I can do to develop this market. With the kind of the passion that I had for a particular sort of design, what do you say, like design ideology. So, by the way, I'm not sure if everyone can see a green line on their screen. Somehow it got drew onto the screen and it's not going away. I'm not sure what it is. So, this was kind of like the starting point for me. My inspiration pretty much it came from the sort of minimalism background. So it was the first time that I visited Bauhaus Museum in Germany. I was totally stimulated by the beautiful objects that were there, and the functionality of them, and the whole concept of being able to design something that can be available to everyone, so everyone can have access to it. And design is not necessarily for people who can afford it. So this was kind of the concept there from day one. And generally, I was always kind of inclined towards this idea of minimalism, the simple lines, that kind of the slick look. And obviously, I think, again, this was kind of built as I was going through different work experiences, and having worked in retail, and in retail such as Bloomingdale's as well. We did a lot of shop windows where everything had to be so slick in terms of structure that the product can show itself. So I think there was almost like a background of that built in my head as well. So the first sort of collection, let's say, or the first product that I got into to design, and I started sketching was this beautiful piece, which I initially called line stand, and then somehow it turned into an abaya stand over here during all these exhibitions. So the whole idea of this piece was actually made for me. I was keen to have something in my own house where I can, just put my clothes on. It's something that's functional. It doesn't consume a lot of space. It's slick, and it can still look nice when it's empty. I always hated these hangers that you would have on the side of the room, and they just look ridiculous when you don't have anything hung on it, and when you do, it looks even worse. So the idea was to have this simple line, just kind of like your sketchbook, a black line that sort of continues, and it forms these different shapes and a variety of functionality. And the functionality can also change based on your need. And it turned out to be this sort of lovely piece of having these sort of hanger elements, a console, a lighting, and it was all the essentials that I wanted from this piece. And by adding the marble, it really kind of added more value to it, and also it made it more like stable, more of a solid piece as well. So having had this idea in mind, and I have to say, when I first designed it and produced it, it wasn't that I produced it and it was, into a Photoshop and it was on sale. No, that definitely wasn't the case. So what you see today, what you see here, is something that has been obviously a professional photographer has done this, and it's turned into a beautiful image. But when I first did it, I started prototyping this piece. And meanwhile, as I was doing that, I thought, why not apply the same concept of line and create other pieces that can apply to everybody. The function is quite sort of, is basic enough that everyone can have a piece of this collection in their house. And by changing the material, just simply going from this sort of black line, which could potentially be more industrial, to a brass element, all of a sudden you're giving it a very different look. In addition to that, I always I felt that materials, they need to kind of stay true to their nature as well. So I've always tried to think about, your stone, marble, which is available to us over here, and this doesn't apply to any country. So it's kind of like, okay, let's utilize the material we have here, and you've got two kind of shelving of like beautiful walnut wood. So trying to kind of combine all these materials together, but in a very harmonious way. And as you can see in the pictures as well, play with this line, the thickness of the line, and creates again a collection that is available to anyone, and anyone can have a piece of this. So this is how the process of design was slowly happening for me. And it wasn't linear. It wasn't that I thought, I'm going to do this, so I'm going to have a collection and then retail it, and then I'm going to move on to the next thing. But it was almost it was developing, because I was quite new to it as well. I was getting to know my material better. I was trying to understand furniture better, proportions better. And this came through a lot of prototyping as well. So that was, I think, the most crucial part, to make sure that this piece doesn't just look beautiful, but is functional. And it also meant that sometimes if it was a small piece and I could take home with me, I would take it home and I would use it just to kind of see how it feels, because I really strongly believe that material, they connect with you. They have an impact on your life. They have an impact on your space, on your surroundings. So, the whole thing kind of needs to work together. Another kind of opportunity that sort of fell into my lap, which was lovely, it was a Ramadan collection that was required by by Bloomingdale's home store. So at this point, they knew what I was up to, and they wanted a piece of it. So they asked me to design a Ramadan collection for them, for their sort of Ramadan pop-up, along with other accessories and furniture. And obviously, as an Iranian, I felt like I need to delve into my Iranian side, my Middle Eastern side. And I didn't want to do something that was kind of cliche in terms of, like making another sort of mashrabiyya or calligraphy design, like a standard traditional one. I already knew the customer profile as well. So I think that sort of helped me to try and design something that can work with slightly sort of classic taste, maybe to a degree, but also the modern clientele at Bloomingdale's home store. And what the result kind of turned out to be is a very kind of simple frame on the left-hand side of this collection, so being the console or the side table, the coffee table, which I think represents my the non-Iranian side of me. Is very Scandinavian, is pretty much how I like to dress. And the left side of it, the right side of it ended up being quite solid, actually. I would say this would be my Iranian side. So it's actually calligraphy for this particular one that I've put into the presentation. And I did another version that has like the mashrabiyya. But it makes the piece very solid. It makes the piece kind of look very grand. And it was a very successful collection actually at Bloomingdale's, because I think it was the nice sort of combination of two design that everyone liked, and it wasn't so heavy like the classic pieces that we've seen in the past. And just to kind of play around with this whole idea of calligraphy and having something a bit more kind of fun and playful, I ended up doing a couple of sort of smaller pieces as part of this collection for Bloomingdale's. And one of them being this sort of acrylic with a nice sort of fun color print on it, and adding this element of onyx marble on top, which all of a sudden adds another value to it. As we all know, onyx is one of the sort of top marbles in the market. And it's translucent. So if you have a light inside, then you can actually light up this little side table. And in addition to that, continuing that kind of same scheme, there's a stool, the kind of orange stool, again, making it a little bit more fun, a little bit more unconventional. And I remember the way we wanted to photo shoot this as well was to have it against this kind of like super raw background with a hideous leather. So the piece is so gorgeous, it's so fun and playful that it doesn't need all the decoration around it. So that was actually quite a fun one as well. Okay, I'm gonna sort of move on to production, but just to kind of end that sort of the design process and the inspiration process, I think it's really important for whoever's trying to start a brand or trying to, maybe it's not a brand, but trying to kind of develop a product, and they don't know where to start, they don't know how to get going. I think for this part of what this sort of stage of the process is really, really important to really explore your ideas, to if you don't know where to start, you can kind of, I think, always look within, because I think we naturally dress a certain way, or we decorate our homes or our rooms in a certain way. So I think the brand identity is usually right there in front of you. Obviously, if you like what you're wearing and if you like how you're decorating your room. So I think it's an element of looking more and more into it, exploring that, to try and kind of find what you're into. And this usually doesn't just come by sketching, but I think for me personally, the prototyping stage was very important, because then you really get to know materials, you really get to know how the reality, like in reality, how these pieces would look. And this kind of leads us into the production part of it, which is super important, because I know I've come across actually a lot of students, especially when I was approached by students because they had this idea, or they had this sort of 3D visual, and they wanted to produce it. And having a brand or being a designer doesn't necessarily mean that you're in your office and you're designing, and that's sort of the end of the line. Production is, I think, is the most important, especially when it comes to furniture, and especially when it comes to sort of high quality premium furniture. You can have a beautiful design in 3D or sketch, or you can visualize the most amazing design out there. But if the production is not there, if the quality is not there, you have nothing end of the day. However, if you have something that's quite average and the production is fantastic, then you might even get something better than you thought. So really think about that and make sure that this stage of the process is not dismissed, in a sense. So I always this was kind of learning on the job as well, but I always knew that production and manufacturing is not a separate entity. Eventually it became part of the team as well. But even in the early days, I realized that in order for this concept, for this brand to work, I need to make sure that the people I'm working with are the extended part of my team. Otherwise, it's really hard to kind of maintain a relationship if the two parties are not aligned, and if the business is supposed to continue. So if it's just a one-off product, then obviously that's a different story. But if you're thinking that your business is a continuous sort of strategy, then you need to make sure that the relationship is solid and that the relationship is also going to continue. And to make sure that the team that you're going to find, and I'll kind of get into that now, but the team that you're going to work with, there is a mutual respect and there is a good dialogue, and you need to definitely spend the time to make sure that you train them in the way that you want them to work. So my own experience, my personal experience, as I was kind of hunting for the right workshop, I actually did a really good research. I worked, I think, with 4 to 5 workshops initially, as I was going through my sort of prototyping stage. There were days when I cried on site at the workshop because the result was something so awful that it completely demotivates you, and you just don't think it's ever going to work, and you want to sort of stop the whole thing. But it doesn't come easy. It takes a while. But after a good research, after prototyping with different manufacturers, with different sort of workshops in town, I found something that was a bit more solid. And for me, more solid meant that I can be patient enough that I'm going to attend a workshop every day. I'm going to see these guys every day and make sure that they see me, and we can start a nice, healthy dialogue. So we can understand each other. I need to understand their frustration as well, because I think a lot of times what happens is that designers normally pass on their work, their drawing, to the contractor or to the production team, and perhaps they're not good enough for anyone to understand. And due to language barrier, due to sort of working with a very kind of diverse team internationally, a lot of the workshops that I've come across, for instance, they wouldn't confront. So they wouldn't tell you that this design or this drawing is awful, and we can't even use this to do anything. So they would never say it in front of you, and then you kind of end up getting something awful, and then they wouldn't be reliable for it. So it was good to have those conversations and really ask them, is this information enough for you? Do you understand what I'm trying to achieve here? If not, let's talk about it. And naturally, they would then open up, and perhaps initially they wanted to take the easy way and they wanted to use materials that was more accessible to them. But then eventually they realized, they understood the vision. They understood what we're trying to achieve, that we're trying to do something different. We are caring and thinking about each piece individually. So let's try and use the most sort of recent technology that is available to us. Yes, let's use the right material, the right sort of veneer, the right steel, because there's so many variety of them out there as well in terms of quality. And when that happened, then the dialogue became so healthy, and there was a mutual understanding. So the mutual understanding also comes from the designer too. So if you can't respect the deadline right because of A, B, and C, and there was a time that I had to understand and go, okay, you know what, you take a few days extra because I know that you want to work out this little detail here and provide something, that is sort of top quality. So I'm looking at my notes as well to make sure I'm covering everything. So this part, again, the importance, I think, is to make sure that you're doing your market research, you are finding the right team to work with, whoever is going to suit you, and the production is not a one-off. It's not a one-off work. There's a lot of prototyping that's happening. There's a lot of testing, visiting your work to make sure that everything is going smoothly and you're not just seeing the end result and it's not, it's not what you wanted. A couple of other very important scenarios. One of them is to do with your contract with the production team as well. And that's very important because if you're working long-term as a brand with a production team, with a manufacturer, then you need to make sure obviously your designs are being respected and they're not going to be replicated for other projects. And it's always, I think, worth having some sort of terms and conditions, some elements of contract that you can again both understand and respect. And have that signed and dated in case you're ever going to need it. And also make sure that your contractor also understands that some of your clients, they might choose to go to your contractor directly if they get to know them. Some customers, some of the clients are not aware perhaps that it's not ethical to do this. And you need to make sure that you have such a solid relationship with your contractor, with your workshop team, that everything's transparent. They can share this information with you to make sure that it doesn't happen. And also, I think again, it's worth doing a contract with them to make sure that your clients are always going to remain your clients. I'm going to drink a little bit of water because I think my voice is slowly going. So just a few kind of imagery. These are like some of the, again, initial projects that I worked on, just kind of showing how it goes from a very silly sketch that I have here. Again, I didn't have all my imagery, so I tried to kind of manage with what I had, and how it goes into production. But you can kind of see like every stage was kind of documented to make sure that there is a good kind of documentation of everything that we are making. And really kind of, you can see on the last photo on the right-hand side, there are tons of different materials, there are tons of different varieties. So it was very important to see the progress. And if there are any changes you need to make, then, you can make the decisions right there and then, before it's too late and everything has been done. And for instance, out of like basically through this kind of process, I mean, this was the console or the side table, but this was the final result after a lot of kind of conversation and testing the product. Then for us, just sort of once we had the production and the manufacturing element in place. For TAM, the progress potentially was a little bit different, I would say. So it's interesting because initially I had this idea that I'm going to start producing collections and I'm going to be retailing them, and this was kind of my business strategy. But I think I heard it somewhere, it was like a podcast, you might sometimes think that you're going to go into business, selling or selling apples, but then you realize that your client actually wants oranges. They're more inclined towards oranges. So what we organically realized that our clients really want to customize their pieces. They like what they see, they like the style, they really connect with it, which was wonderful because it was also telling us that they are the local community, the UAE community is connecting more and more to this kind of modern, slick design, and it's no longer about the classic pieces that our parents had. And I realized that there are a lot of changes being done, and there are a lot of kind of changes in terms of dimension, but also in terms of medium, in terms of material. So organically, we started doing more and more bespoke pieces. This wasn't something that I expected at all when I first started, but these are the kind of wonderful sort of directions that you start taking. But you obviously need to make sure as well it is what you want, and you need to make sure that this is how you kind of envision your business as well. We started doing more and more these sort of bespoke elements for our clients, which was a lot of fun because I was getting to know my clients more through design. So I got to understand people and how they connect with their surrounding, how they use their daily objects around them. And this was very interesting to me because it gave me the opportunity to visit a lot of houses, connect with clients on a very kind of personal level, because then you had to really understand their personal needs. And also educating clients as well, in terms of when a bespoke piece is being made, you can really decide what you want. It doesn't have to be the ordinary drawer anymore. It doesn't have to be the standard size. So if you're a tall person, then why don't we do the dining table, a little bit higher for you? And then have that perfect chair for you as well. So it was very much around educating and being able to obviously provide to that need as well, and trying to kind of work in a very kind of diverse way. So we had a lot of design enthusiasts who just wanted something beautiful, and trying to tell them, listen, if you do want something beautiful and this is exactly what you want, what we want to do for you, but let's really customize it. Why don't we do that? Why don't we try and make something that you're going to enjoy in terms of functionality? And then you had the gamer young lady, and she wanted all the comforts, and she knew exactly what she wanted. So it's kind of been really fun in that sense, interacting and connecting with different clients. And again, naturally, when we started producing a lot of sort of bespoke pieces, we realized that our clients want more. So they don't just want that one single piece, or they don't just want the furniture, but they're asking a lot of advice for what to do in terms of the interior design of their house, or of smaller spaces as well. And this was something that initially we were just kind of, we were supporting our clients. So this is our furniture, but yeah, why don't you do this wallpaper? And then you can kind of do this and that. But then it kind of got more and more overwhelming because they wanted to see stuff and they wanted 3D renders. We're okay, let's accommodate that need as well. But hey, this is an additional service now. So the idea was, again, we can grow this organically. Why aren't we adding that service to the umbrella of TAM Studio? And for me, like this was a moment of, okay, this is obviously a solid brand in terms of furniture. And I wanted to be a solid brand in terms of interior design and perhaps many other things in the future. And that's why we are now expanding our team to suit that need. And it's been a wonderful journey so far. So now we are getting more and more into interior design projects. And the beautiful thing about it is that we understand furniture so well, and we work with such small detail that even when we are focusing on bigger scope of work, we can still kind of zoom in and concentrate on smaller detail still. And this is something we're also helping other...
Recording in progress.
I'm not sure what that was. This is something we are also helping other interior designers with as well. So normally interior designers have a lot to do, it's a big scope usually, and we can help them with the smaller details in terms of the furniture that they're producing, and they are obviously trying to achieve the client's vision here. So we can come in and we can support them with that. Moving on to, I'm trying to look at the time as well and see how much time we have. So moving on to, so let's say you've got the final sort of product, you've got a fantastic sort of strategy, business strategy there, and you want to start sort of marketing it and get the word out and about. Personally, for us, it was one of those journeys that sort of naturally happened. Again, I think because at the time we didn't have a lot of sort of bespoke furniture designers, so I feel that made us stand out. And I remember our first exhibition, and it was actually when we launched the product in 2016 at Index, which was a fantastic platform for us. I remember I visited Index actually once before, and I highly recommend that to anybody who wants to participate and be part of an exhibition. I think it's really important to go and visit the first year, making sure that you understand the dynamic, you understand the profile of people who do visit that exhibition. And I think you can always speak to the exhibitors. They give you a lot of information. Actually, normally people are super nice and helpful during exhibitions. So you can get a lot of information in terms of whether it's working for them, whether they're getting a good footfall. And for us, it works out in a very strange way. So I remember Index that year wasn't really about boutique sort of design at all. It was actually more kind of franchised brands that were exhibiting. And that's how we stood out that year. People came to the stand and were like, wow, you were the only one who was doing kind of like this sort of unique bespoke furniture or unique collection. And that was a very good opportunity for us. A lot of people kept our cards for several years and got in touch with us. I think after a couple of years going, we've just moved house, but we remember you from Index 2016. You were one of the good stands. So that was a very kind of nice, fun opportunity. Again, I think definitely it's important to do your research and to make sure when you do attend, you're ready. You're ready in terms of your product, your collection, your prices, the logistical elements, deliveries. Exhibitions can be very stressful. They are very sort of compact in terms of time, in terms of how much time you have to install. The exhibition period can obviously be a bit exhausting, standing around and chatting and more or less repeating the same information, and yet wanting to connect to people as well on a sort of individual level. And also you normally have a few hours just to pack and leave because there's no more security there. So you need to make sure that happens. So think about the whole umbrella of exhibition, and if it's for you, then it's very, I think nowadays, especially nowadays, actually in the UAE, perhaps it's easier because the things are just kind of starting up, and normally these platforms are looking for exhibitors, so it's a good time to attend, and I think people are very keen to go out and about and explore. So yes, it will be a good opportunity. The picture on the left, on the right-hand side is actually another one is the hotel show. That was another sort of nice exhibition that we did. That was, I think, our sort of the year after. So our first year, let's say, so Index was the year we launched, and then we did the hotel show the year after. Again, same process. I got to know the exhibition a little bit before attending, and it was another sort of successful one for us. Now, I've done the successful exhibition. I'll do one that wasn't so successful. It was a lot of good time and a very good experience. But the exhibition actually was Maison Objet in Paris, 2018. When we attended, we managed to save ourselves a very kind of small spot that wasn't necessarily on like the main hall. And regardless, we did a fantastic show. We had a lot of people attending. However, the issue that we had that I did not foresee at all was the logistical issue. So these products are obviously UAE made. And I think there was a lot of interest around that, but then how do you get it shipped to France? The shipping costs are a fortune. So obviously that meant there were a very limited number of people interested in the product because they could only have it by container. Otherwise it would cost more than the actual price of the furniture. So there are a lot of learnings along the way. And you just got to make sure that you minimize that as much as possible to save yourself, all the hassle. But I have to say, even though it was stressful and the outcome wasn't as good as the other exhibitions that we did, but it was still a very kind of nice platform to get to know the international crowd and also understand what they're more into, what sort of styles they're more keen on. Then another sort of way to go out and about and make sure that everyone gets to know you is some, I think, very kind of standard sort of pathways I think a lot of brands take, making sure that you have your, you approach publications, you approach all the kind of design publications that you can find. It doesn't have to be in the UAE either, it could be anywhere. Don't shy away from writing to them. This is something that we were a lot better at before COVID, actually. I think COVID slowed things down a little bit. Just spread the news if you have a new collection, if you're starting up a line, any kind of news that you can share. Never shy away from sharing it. I think the idea is the more people get to know you, then the more visibility you have. We did some fun ones during our exhibitions with, I think one of them was Virgin Radio, a couple of the magazines. So that was always kind of nice, and it was a nice way of expanding our network and getting to know more people out there. The last sort of, I've kind of put some of the logos of our design community out there. The last kind of topic that is as important as the rest of the sort of topics that we briefly touched on today is the design community. I briefly mentioned it. I remember when I started, I think it was kind of early days on, and I was still trying to learn about the business myself. I had new grads coming to me and asking for advice and sharing their ideas and products and wanting sort of the studio to collaborate to make their product and make it happen. And I remember always kind of thinking, oh, well, I'm still trying to learn and I'm still trying to find time to do my own tasks. But at the same time, there was this idea that it's important to help out. And this has always kind of been in my head, especially I think in Dubai is such a small community that it's, in a way, it's quite easy to be able to support each other, be able to work together, not in a sense of collaboration always, but also to be there when someone needs help, and vice versa. I think when you when you start a brand, when you start a business, naturally, whether you as yourself or you have a very small team, it's a small team, and there are days that you just want to, you just need the extra support. You just want to cry for help, and it's always nice to have a community that can provide that support to you. And I really feel that it can never be done by yourself. So if you're really thinking of expanding, it can never be a one-person show. So it's important to keep that in mind, and obviously understanding, where do you want to be? Do you want to keep it small and strive? There's no problem with that. Or do you want to expand? And if you do, then you're going to need to work with people, and you're going to need to bring people on board, collaborate. And something that recently happened, actually, it was Styled Habitat, and I've put them on the page as well, the logo on the page. Rabel from Styled Habitat did a wonderful thing, and she basically started a very kind of small group of designers. We actually met back at Index, funny enough, and this group kind of did something that was very substantial to me. So when we met, the idea was to meet every now and then and really kind of talk about our business, but not in a way that you go and do networking, but be very transparent and honest about your business. And we've done a few sessions so far, and it's been wonderful when you know that there is no mask on. You don't have to pretend that everything's going well. You can really kind of talk about your struggles, and perhaps the other person is going through the same thing with the client, or perhaps it's their strength and they can help you, or perhaps you know something about it and you recently experienced it and you've overcome it and you can help out. So this to me was a very interesting idea, and it's something that has been ongoing. And the next thing that we've done is to bring on board some of like the speakers from the marketing world, from the business world, to kind of make this experience, make this sort of couple of hours more useful. And it's something that I highly recommend to the beginners and also to the designers out there to try and create that sort of community. I feel like a lot of times we're trying to compete, perhaps, or we're trying to do our own thing, and everyone's holding back in terms of sharing knowledge. And it's a lot easier to get hurt, let's say. Whereas if we're sticking together, then we definitely have a better community naturally. And I think we're all providing such a diverse service that if a client is coming to you, they're coming to you for a reason. So there shouldn't really be such a competition. So ending it with that note, the design community. And now I guess we can move on to the questions.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Tamilla. That was fantastic. Very, very interesting. Lovely, subtle, elegant detail in the design work as well. Love to see the process. That's amazing. I have a couple of questions. I don't want to steal too many questions because I'm sure maybe the guests here have some nice questions for you. But one of the interesting things for me, you mentioned that you have to obviously protect yourself when you're producing your designs with your manufacturers. And I'm wondering, this seems to have come up a few times. What do you think needs to kind of change? Do you think a contract with these manufacturers, the manufacturers you're working with, is sort of working? Is that successful? Or is it still a question of really being sort of on the case with it? And what is the support? Because I feel like to support the kind of designers growing in the UAE, there needs to be this different level of respect for how all the pieces are fitting together, the manufacturers, the interior designers, the designers, how everyone's working together. As you said, it's very much coming together, and how we can collectively kind of develop the design scene here. So intrigued to know, could you expand on that a bit, maybe in terms of the support and the the concerns with working with manufacturers and what to look out for and what to maybe avoid?
Sure. So this is, I mean, I'm just going to summarize it. So basically the relationship between the designer and the manufacturer.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Interesting question. I think that it's kind of funny enough, as part of one of the sessions that we actually had with Style of Habitat, we actually had a manufacturer, not the one that I've kind of been working with, but sort of a well-established one on board. And when you start hearing their kind of sort of concerns or the issues that they're facing, I just feel like there needs to be a lot more communication around that, because so some of the concerns that came up, for instance, one of them I sort of mentioned briefly was how much information is provided from a designer to the manufacturer. Is this information accurate? Is this information final? And one concern that normally the manufacturer has is that if the design, if the drawing, the imagery is not finalized and it keeps changing, then this is obviously a lot of time being wasted for the manufacturer that they're not actually earning from. So how do you kind of make sure that this process works smoothly is, again, having that dialogue. What exactly do you need from me? So then I'll be able to provide it to you. If there needs to be a BOQ, if there needs to be a certain sort of shop drawing, technical drawing that you need to provide, then that needs to be there, and that needs to be the finalized version. Because I think a lot of time designers just sort of forward all the information to the manufacturer, and it's not 100% finalized from their client side, and then they tend to go back and make some changes, and these changes potentially can look small to us, but then for the manufacturer as a whole, you know, as a whole lot of change. And they need to then revise their drawings, and they need to revise their cost.
So would you say out of interest,
Yeah.
if you were very specific with a production drawing, obviously there's always changes when you're working with a manufacturer, because they have certain equipment, certain expertise. So it's always a little bit of translation, I guess, with any technical drawing. But if you produced a really detailed technical drawing, is that going to really iron out the problems? Are they going to produce what you present to them? Is that quite a direct process?
Then it really depends, and I think that's when your initial research comes in. If you've done a few smaller projects with these guys, then you need to make sure that they are up to scratch, because as you know, as we all know, there are plenty. I mean, there are a number of designers, and it's growing pretty fast. But there are also plenty of manufacturers, you know, contractors, new contractors in the market. So it's really important to work with the ones that you trust, because end of the day, even if the product is not what you wanted, but it is what you drew, you know, it is what you designed, there still should be a dialogue there. I think that, hey, I know that this is what I designed, and I know that this is exactly what you've produced, but it's not there yet. Can we make some changes? I mean, obviously, if you're thinking huge changes all over, then perhaps there's a cost attached to it. But they need to understand as well, through that relationship, that the changes are going to happen, and you know, there is going to be more projects coming along, so it's okay. You can also take the responsibility a little bit as well.
Yeah, brilliant. I suppose there's one other question I have for you, and then I'll hand you over to the floor for questions. When you were setting up originally, I'm kind of intrigued to hear a little bit more about your challenges in terms of how you found manufacturers and how you found your clients, which must have been probably the two biggest challenges, perhaps.
Finding clients, I think initially we had a very kind of nice, smooth road. I think launching at an exhibition was obviously a very kind of a very solid way of getting our brand name out there. You know, all of a sudden we were kind of being shown to perhaps hundreds of people. So I think that naturally helped. And I think a good product, a good service generally is promoted by your clients. So once you do a good work, and this is what's happened to us recently, that through, it's just word of mouth. We don't even focus on social media so much, and it's something that we want to get back into. But through, you know, through word of mouth, initially through social media. So one thing that initially we did as well was really kind of be active on our social media. I think Instagram, especially in this region, has a very high audience of you know, visitors. So that was very helpful. And also, like, a couple of things, I think these are more kind of general business related. These are things that I personally used to kind of go online and watch a lot of YouTube on. The more you're out and about personally, the more you're attending these kind of events and having fun with it, the more you're naturally going to sort of expose the brand. The more people you know, the more you know, interest you're going to get. So you've got to make sure it's not a one role business. You know, it's not that you're a designer and you're going to design and you're going to sit at home and just wait for it to be produced and, you know, out in the market. But you really have to kind of be active. And if you're an introvert like I was, or I am, then you kind of got to get out of your comfort zone. You got to get out there. You've got to learn to talk about your product and talk about your brand, because it is something that you believe in, I guess. You know, that's why you started it. So that's the sort of marketing side of things. I think naturally, if you do something good, it's going to work, but just make sure that you're really out and about and you're really kind of expanding your network. And this could be friends and family to start with. And with regards to sort of production and manufacture, it's a tough one. It's not easy at all. Like I mentioned, I used to do prototyping, so I would actually, and it's a, you know, it's a bit of a costly exercise as well. So I would give a couple of products to a few different manufacturers and let them make it, and just see what the result is going to be without a lot of even site visits, to see if they're smart and sharp enough, and if there is a mistake, are they gonna feel like they're reliable, or is it like, what was your mistake? I actually, a good example, I designed a desk in a way that the leg wasn't stable, so it would fall off. And I remember when the manufacturer made it, they just kind of presented it to me and they were holding it. So I was like, well, let go of the desk. And he let go, and you know, the desk was going to fall off. And I thought, what is this? And he said, well, you've designed it. You know, we're just making what you've designed. I'm thinking, well, you know, you got to use your own brain as well. So, and it's kind of funny now, by the time you're thinking, gosh, like, we can never work together. I mean, this is not the attitude at all.
Yeah, as designers, we don't really know how the design is going to turn out really until we produce the first prototype. So it has to be a little bit of a dialogue at that point, two parties coming together to make it work. Very true, very true.
Mutual understanding.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Tamilla. Well, look, I'm sure there's loads of questions from our audience. So if you raise your e-hand, if you've got a question, anything obviously to do with setting up, obviously a brand over here, manufacture, production, design process. And I think Karam's going to help people connect. Anyone have a question for Tamilla?
So how does this work, Rock?
Karam?
Karam,
are you there?
Yes.
If you raise...
yes, I can see that Valentina has raised her hand. So, yeah. Valentina, you just need to unmute yourself.
Okay. Hello. Thank you so much for all the information. It's been very interesting. So I don't come from a design background, and I have two questions. The first question is, I have a set of designs. So I'm an artist. I have a set of designs for home accessories. So things such as lighting, that I would like to produce and manufacture, but I don't necessarily want to let's say, work for anybody in terms of employment and within a company to become a designer full-time. And I don't necessarily want to open up my company. I want to do a kind of collaboration, let's say, with another company. And how would I go about doing this? Would I pick a small boutique company to work with? Should I still do it on my own? Should I just do it with a set of other designers, or any recommendations would be welcome?
Sure, sure.
And not just here in the UAE, I'm talking about internationally.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, the sky is the limit. Like, there's no need to, especially if it's a small item. I think if we had an accessory lines, then we would have definitely done more collaboration with internationally. It really depends. I think it really depends on the nature of the product, the look, and you know, where you kind of see it going as well. So you probably know your product better and the audience for it. So if it's something that you feel is a niche market over here, then perhaps, and you don't necessarily want to open up and start your whole, you know, your own thing, but it's definitely worth starting like the communication with a few companies that you think would be interested, and they could be you know, sort of brands out here. Generally, if you are working with brands, the mother brand is usually outside of the UAE. So then obviously the communication needs to start from there, and then eventually the product could potentially be displayed here and sold here. But I think it really depends on the nature of the product. And I don't know if you've done any prototyping. So if you've got your product physically, or is you know, in the sort of developing stage on a paper just yet.
It's on paper. It's definitely on paper because it's quite complicated. It requires, manufacturing is difficult. Let's just put it that way. These products are not just kind of tables, or they're very highly, the design part is very.
And you said they're lighting as well. I think especially with lighting, I mean, I don't actually know a good sort of production manufacturer for lighting over here. I think technology-wise, it can be a bit limiting here. So if you know that there is a company, for instance, companies who are producing lighting for hospitality, for instance, so, and you know that product is going to be suitable for that market, then I would definitely speak to them and then share with them, you know, the design, obviously after having a good communication, a sort of a relationship, because you don't want them just to take the design either. So you can have that communication with them and, you know, see if they would be interested to do the prototyping with you. Actually, I think Rock would have a good knowledge on that too, by the way. I think that's pretty much his line of work.
Yes, I might be able to help you.
Sorry?
I might be able to help you, true.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. And yeah, I think
steal this talk there. So another time. Sorry, carry on.
I think you kind of answered part of my question is how would I, so if I'm working with them, I mean, obviously the product itself is going to be marketed as part of that company's brand, which I'm totally happy with. I mean, you know, as long as I haven't mentioned that this design was designed by me. But how would I initially protect my designs? I don't really know how it works with design here locally or internationally. Do people sign NDAs, but then you know, like I'm a person from a side who they have no idea if, you know, I'm going to be working with them or not?
I haven't done this before, so I'm not 100% sure how you can protect yourself. I know obviously after there has been a contract, then there is a sort of a royalty fee, but I'm not sure what the first stage would be. And again, I think Rock would definitely have this information. So I think you guys can definitely connect because
just a very, very quick one. Globally speaking, yes, you go for an NDA, non-disclosure agreement to start with. And then ultimately, then you have to go into some kind of terms and conditions or a contractual agreement. But it's whether that stands up here, whether it's respected here, whether you can protect it here. And I don't know the answer to that one, but that's typically what you would do.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And how can I connect with you? Is it if that's okay, of course.
Myself, Rock, I'll just look Rock Galpin up. You can see it on,
I've
on
got-
the screen there, rockgalpin.com.
There we go. I've got Rob's
Oh,
logo
okay,
here.
okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you. I really
No problem
appreciate
at
it.
all.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank
Do you have any other questions? Must be some
No,
juicy
from my
questions,
side,
obvious
I'm
questions.
good.
Okay,
Thanks,
okay.
Manny.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? For lots of you here, there must be a few burning questions.
I've answered them all.
Any questions? Anything to do with how to start up? Maybe, you know, it's quite difficult to take that first step, you know, to do your own thing, having the ideas, setting up your own entity, and then having the kind of courage to take the step forward to actually start creating some pieces. But seems all very scary to start with, but then once you start doing it, I'm sure Tamilla will say exactly the same thing. It sort of seems to sort of flow. You know, if you're doing something that's anywhere near sort of interesting or you know, for people, then it starts to kind of flow, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think it's this idea of knowing that you can't go back, or yeah, literally. I mean, if you go back, it's going to be the same office politics again. So, so just kind of being kind of afraid to go back, but also, I guess having the gut to make decisions all the time. And I think that was perhaps the hardest part for me to get started, because initially it's kind of fun, it's exciting, a little bit stressful, but you're just starting up. But during the process of setting up, during the process of going and doing the research, manufacturers, driving around, these are the elements where obviously there are a lot of times when you think, am I on the right? Should I be continuing with this? And you're making hard decisions every day. And that's something that I personally didn't do when I was working for a corporate, because there was a whole umbrella of people. So I think that was like the toughest part. But when you know for sure that you don't want to go back and you can't go back, that's when you think, you know what, there's only one way to go now. So you just got to hustle it, I guess. You just got to be out and about.
And then you make it work and you realize this is absolutely fantastic, absolutely amazing. What was I thinking about? You know, doubting anything.
Yeah, but I have to say, I'm sure you've probably kind of experienced this as well. Even there are days today when I'm thinking, is this the right thing to do? I mean, do I still want to do this? Because you have good days and bad days. And now it's quite nice because I've got two other ladies in my team where I'm like, oh, you know, this happened and that happened. Well, we just got to keep going. And naturally, you sort of support one another. But yeah, I think it still happens. There are days when you think, maybe I just need a full-time job where I don't have to think so much.
Tamara, you have a question? Do you want to unmute your mic for us?
Hi, Tamilla. Hi, Rock. I just wanted to ask, how did you find your ideal clients? I live in a small place, and where I live, it's very saturated, the market, in terms of architects, interior designers, and even furniture designers, because everyone's sort of producing right now. So do you feel it organically grew from the exhibition back then, and word of mouth in Dubai? Or do you feel like, did you use any particular route or strategy to find the ideal client? You know, yeah.
Hi, Tamara. So I think for us, it was more organic. However, obviously this journey is not sort of a nice sort of path. You know, it has its sort of ups and downs. And the idea is to be proactive. And by proactive, I mean that you have to kind of be behind it. So whether you are targeting, for instance, your social media, Google ads, whether you're attending those networking sessions, whether it's design related or not, because obviously when you go and network with other designers, you're not necessarily going to find a lead here. You're just surrounded by the designers and you're part of the community, you're part of that support system. But just making sure that you're out and about. And I'm not sure what sort of stage you're at, whether you've had your business for a long time and now you're not getting a lot of clients, or whether it's sort of very much early on. If it's early on, then I highly recommend that you have a good plan. So you write down all the possible ways of promoting your brand, promoting yourself, and you make sure that you're ticking those off. And this could potentially be on a weekly basis, that you're reminding yourself and you've got it written, or you rewrite it every day. That's honestly something that I used to do every morning. That I need to hit these targets, and I need to, make sure that they know about me, and I'm providing something that's beautiful, so they need to know about me. Then there are obviously various ways of finding the clients that you like to work with. Once you kind of get into it more and more, and potentially you reach a stage where you don't have to accept all types of projects and work, then you can become a little bit more picky. And being picky means that you obviously don't have the time, or your price point doesn't match what they want. And this is when you can, obviously work with those clients that you like. But I think early days, you don't necessarily have that luxury, and that's okay, because I think you learn from that for sure.
Fantastic. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thanks, Tamara. I think everyone's writing it down, thinking about it.
Well, you can always call Tamilla up and ask some more questions.
Make sure my number is not there.
All right. Well, I think it sounds like we've exhausted questions, unless there's any last question. No. Okay. Tamilla, thank you very much. That's been. Kian, you have a question.
Hello, good evening.
Hello.
So it's amazing. I really like the abaya stand and the Ramadan collection. I wanted to ask you, like, as a designer, because we're into design and you said you studied architecture. When it comes to opening your own business and promoting your own brand, like for the legal part and the financial part, like, did you hire people to help you with that? Or like, because you said you can start small, but like, how small does small mean?
So for the legal, for anything that you're unsure of, I highly recommend that you speak to a professional. So whether if you're writing up contracts, for instance, it's something that you can either do a good online research and really understand more and more about contracts and what you want to include in your contract. But if there are things that you're unsure of, then it's definitely a matter of speaking to a lawyer and just making sure that the foundation is there and everything's kind of stated.
Can you recommend where to go for that? Where do you go to have a contract drawn up? Is there a good starting place?
I kind of had a luxury of knowing a lawyer through a friend. So I actually got some information from him, just sort of consultancy basis. I need to think about that, and perhaps I don't know if I can still, like on YouTube, I can kind of leave more information there, but I don't know anyone top of my head who handles sort of small businesses. One thing to mention, I'm not sure if Jahan has a company through one of these sort of agencies out here, but they normally have a lawyer as well. So let's say your Virtue Zone or your what's the other one? Creative Zone. So they normally have like a team of finance lawyer that you can get in touch with as well to help you with certain stuff.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
No problem. No problem. Are there any other questions? One last question from someone?
Yeah.
No? Okay. All right. Well, we'll end the talk now. Tamilla, thank you. That's been fantastic. Very insightful, very interesting to hear from someone that set up a successful brand over here and what the, kind of what's involved, the challenges, etc. So that's been brilliant. So thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much, Rock. Thank you so much for having me, and Tashkeel for organizing this. It was a very nice experience to share.
Thank you. And just to say, of course, we have talks, lectures, presentations throughout the year. So look on the tashkeel.org site, and as and when they become closer to the time, they will actually upload the latest talks, so you can have a look at those. There's some very interesting speakers coming up, anything from material experts, Chris Lifteri, through to Pallavi Dean, through to Barani and Danish, do some very conceptual work. There are a few off the top of my head. Anyway, some very interesting talks coming up. Brilliant. Okay, well, thanks.
Are they all going to be online?
Sorry? These will be online, yes.
Online, okay.
All online, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks again for everyone to be here. I hope you've really enjoyed that. I certainly have. And I hope you obviously join us for the talks coming up in the future. Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone for being here and listening to this conversation for an hour. Well done. All right. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.